This morning, it's 2 days before E-Day. Do you know who you're voting for? Perhaps our panel of political experts can help sort out the issues and help with your decision.
This is the Emmy Award-winning 11 News Close-Up with your host, Marvin Scott.
Good morning, everyone. Without question, this has been the most polarizing and contentious presidential race this country has ever seen. It has been a campaign dominated by scandal over issues, pitting two candidates against one another with higher unfavorables than favorables among the voters. As of this taping on Friday, many polls show the race to be close. How will Hillary Clinton's email mess and Donald Trump's sexual behavior and comments about women influence voters? This morning, we have assembled our panel of political gurus, partisan and nonpartisan, for one final look at the campaign and the issues, and perhaps a projection as to who will be the 45th president of the United States. We'll meet our panel in just a moment. But first, with the election so close, just 2 days before the vote, both sides are rolling out the big guns and the campaign on the campaign trail, and they're spending big bucks in a final effort to influence voters. Diane Gallagher tells us more.
Big names, big money, little time left. It's coming down to the wire, and Hillary Clinton is maintaining her election edge over a late-surging Donald Trump. Now, surrogates for both candidates are out in full force, crisscrossing the country. Melania Trump, who until today hadn't delivered a campaign speech since the Republican National Convention, made a rare solo appearance speaking to voters in Pennsylvania.
This man I know so well, Donald Trump, with your help and God's grace, will make America great again.
But the plan to catch up or pull away at the last minute is an expensive one. Cue the multi-million-dollar closing arguments.
Countries that hate
Clinton's camp ramped up its spending to roughly $32 million in the final week alone, inundating battleground states and beyond with ads like this one.
Because all it takes is one wrong move.
I would bomb the shit out of him.
Just one.
But Trump is getting in on the big spin, too, dropping around $20 million on spots airing this week.
Don't let her fail us again.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
And while Clinton may be the Cubs fan, both candidates had skin in Game 7. World Series watchers got a side of politics with their baseball Wednesday night, with each campaign running 3 ads during the primetime broadcast.
So many issues, so many things to think about just a couple of literally hours before this election. Pleased now to welcome our guest. Morgan Pekma is a contributing PIX political analyst, and he's executive director of the think tank Effective New York and co-host of Effective Radio on 970 AM. Jessica Proud is a Republican strategist. She's the spokeswoman for the New York State Republican Committee. And Hank Scheinkoff is a political strategist and consultant to many Democratic candidates. Thank you for coming in for one final look. The latest polls, it's still a horse race. The latest Washington Post poll shows Hillary Clinton slightly ahead, a little edge, 3 points ahead. Still, statistically, you have a dead heat here. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that these polls are reflecting true voter sentiment and is what's going to be the result on Tuesday?
Well, we don't know. That's a question we'll have to answer Tuesday night. But never before have we been in a situation where we've seen such volatility in the polls this late in the game. But I think, you know, while the national polls show a dead heat, the thing that people should really be looking at is the individual states. And, you know, a week ago, Hillary Clinton was looking to expand the traditional map. She's had to since rein that in since the FBI came out, and now she's playing defense in a lot of states. So places like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Virginia, Colorado are going to really be the ones. New Hampshire just came out with a poll that showed Trump actually doing better there. He had been behind by double digits. Now he's 1 point ahead. So these individual states are really what voters should be looking at to kind of determine the race. But his chances have improved significantly from a week ago.
You agree?
I mean, that's why being a pundit has been such a fool's errand this cycle, Marvin. Just like a week ago, we were declaring Trump dead, and certainly now he is very much in the mix. The FBI revelations certainly seem to scramble the polls. And, you know, at this point, I think anyone who tells you that they know what's going to happen on Election Day is lying.
Do you think this is bottomed out? Because now, just a couple of days ago, there's a 1-point difference between Trump and Clinton. Now she has a 3-point positive edge. Do you think it has bottomed out, the business with the latest email scandal?
No, I don't think it has at all. You know, you have these kinds of last moment of events that change the outcomes. You had it in 1980. Jimmy Carter was supposed to win. The numbers moved in the last 4 days. Pat Goodell, brilliant pollster, figured it out. It was too late for Jimmy Carter. The email scandal is connected to everything that people don't want to talk about, which is sex, corruption, and that effectively negates the attacks on Donald Trump. Now the issue is who's most angry and who is most motivated to turn out. And if you look at states where there's motion, it tells you that largely white, non-college educated men are turning out with greater intensity, and they haven't changed their behavior. And frankly, the email discussion and the sexting discussion has motivated the turnout more, and that may be what's moving those numbers in the way that they are.
I was just going to say, I think what happened was it allowed a lot of the Republicans to come home, too. Republicans that were not necessarily for Trump. They were concerned about what happened with the Hollywood Access tapes. They're now coming home. And this was always going to be a very close race.
Now, are voters dividing similar to the way it was in 2012? Because I think in the end, President Obama won by just 4 points.
Well, I think, and go ahead, but she's actually doing worse than he was at this point. So if you look at where he was, 538 said he had a 91% chance of winning the battleground states, and she's at like the high 60s, I think. So.
You know, keep in mind the day before Election Day in 2012, Mitt Romney thought that he was going to be the next president. And, you know, I think a lot is going to come down to the vote polling operation. Hillary Clinton has not been as successful with African American voters so far. There's a major push to bring Latinos to the poll. And, you know, Hillary Clinton has a more professional, sophisticated Election Day operation. We'll see whether that will be the difference. It certainly was a big difference for President Obama in 2012.
Well, I also saw in 2004 where John Kerry was ahead, I think, by 1 point before. And, of course, George Bush won that election.
That ground game can be worth 2 or 3 points, frankly, nationally. But there's something else going on here that we're really not paying attention to. If you consider that Democrats have the edge in the Electoral College, and they've generally had the edge in presidential campaigns, the Senate's an even fight, and the House is a fix for the Republicans because they've controlled the reapportionment process smartly. Why isn't she doing better? Why isn't she doing better? She should be running away with this thing, but she's not. It tells you about the changing nature of the country and why this election is so important and why the future elections may be very, very different as a function of what we see.
Now, a number of states allow voters to change their vote, and that's what Donald Trump has been calling for all week. Think that can make any kind of a difference?
Depends on which states. I mean, if you watch the Senate races and you'll have a better sense of what's going on. Blunt in Missouri, that was a walk away, and then it wasn't a walk away, and now Blunt's back in the game and they're head to head. Wisconsin, the Republican Johnson was dead. Now he's back to life. Portman in Ohio was down by 20 points. Now he's in the lead by almost 20 points. Florida, Rubio looks to win. If you look at New Hampshire, which is very, very important for different reasons, that senator was in trouble. That state tends to vote Democrat. Guess what? It's not happening that way in the numbers people think. Those Senate races are indicative of what is going on and why those numbers are tightening up. This is a very, very serious moment for America. Part of what's causing these changes is a demographic shift. But the other thing that's happening is that African Americans and others have kind of given up. The numbers are not the turnout numbers that we think they should be, at least in projection today.
Okay, I want to pick up on the latest economy barometer came out today where jobs are much better. Unemployment is down. I want to pick up on that. First, let's take a break. Stay with us as Pix 11 News Close-Up continues. Back with Morgan Peckma, Jessica Proud, and Hank Scheinkoff. Issues in this campaign, they've been overshadowed by all the mudslinging and the salaciousness that we've experienced. Now, a poll came out and said the number one issue confronting voters this year, I think 29% said it's the economy. And on Friday, the day of this taping, the latest barometer on the economy came out where it showed a good jobs picture. Unemployment is down. Is this going to benefit Republicans or Democrats?
No, because the important thing behind those numbers is that the labor participation rate is still lacking. It's still around hovering in the 60 percentile, and the median wage has not gone up either. So people are still not doing better than they were at the time of the recession. So while the numbers have gone up slightly, it's still falling under projections, and we're not adding jobs at the rate we should be. We should be growing at 3, 4, 5%, 6% even, with a real pro-growth economy. So people at home are feeling like, we haven't had a wage increase in the last 15 years, and they're either unemployed or underemployed, and those are the numbers you really need to look at.
When people look at, say, the economy is their number one concern, they're not looking at it like economists, right? You don't feel those statistics at home. We're talking about pocketbook issues. And what I have seen across the country is that there is a great deal of fear in this country, and there is a great deal of anger. Those have been the dominating forces of this election. And a lot of that fear is tied to the fact that we have a stagnant economy, and most people do not feel like they're doing better now than they did in the past. And that is a motivating factor. But the statistics are not something that will move voters one way or the other at the polls.
What do you think, Hank?
Look, people always worry about the economy, but truthfully, there's something else going on here. This sense that Morgan touched on of personal insecurity and financial insecurity are long-term trends, and that when you fuel that with the culture of gossip and entertainment, where information and its veracity become less important than the information itself, which is what the internet is really all about. You can't verify. You create almost hysteria. Now, we've had this before in American politics, by the way, and the print press moved it along with the attacks on Abraham Lincoln, the comparison of him to a monkey and an idiot, and all kinds of other things, the attacks on Catholicism that were used to destroy Al Smith, all wrong. But by the way, these attacks are not new in American politics. They tend to be economically and regionally based, is where they start out, and they start from fear. What's happened now and what is different is the incessant and reinforcement of those themes on the internet, on television, and in print media. It's not a good reflection of our democracy.
Well, one of the themes that Trump has been hitting on in recent days has been Obamacare. He says he'll repeal it, and this seems to be touching nerves, particularly at a time where some of these insurance rates are spiking so high.
What are you going to do to give people health care in this country? I mean, the fact is it's unresolved. It sounds great, but it also goes to a pocketbook issue that it goes back to the notion of insecurity, and that is what is driving these voter turnouts.
Yeah, and when you talk about people that have not seen their wages go up, yet the cost of everything keeps going up, so they can't keep up with the fact that, some of these areas are getting as high as 70 and 80% increases. They're already paying these huge premiums, so it makes it harder and harder. Their household pie is getting smaller and smaller, and they're frustrated.
Morgan, you pointed out the anger is there. There's no question about it. And there's a poll, I think a CBS New York Times poll, shows that the majority of voters are simply repulsed by this election. And they're very doubtful that either candidate can unify this country after an election. Do you feel that way?
I think that is absolutely a true reflection of how the country is going to be post-election day. Everyone's saying, we have to come together and we have to heal this whole laundry list of problems that are dividing our nation. That is not going to happen. It is going to be a very volatile situation afterwards. If Hillary Clinton is elected, you're going to see just a barrage of investigations coming from the Republican Congress. I mean, we are going to be in a very precarious situation for some time unless we take a very pronounced philosophical shift in this country, and I don't see that at this moment.
And the other thing that is remarkable, I hope we don't have to talk about this on Election Day, but there is a chance, albeit a very small one, that either candidate cannot get to the 270 Electoral College votes. Is it likely? Probably not, but there is a scenario by which that could happen, and it would go to the House of the Representatives to choose the next president.
What do you see of that as a likelihood, Hank?
Look, I'm one of the imbeciles that said a year and a half ago that Trump would not be the nominee, and then 6 months ago I said it was likely that he would be in the hunt, and I've been right about a lot of it and wrong about a little of it, so predicting what will occur is kind of just dumb. You can't be sure.
At the last count, we show Hillary Clinton projected to get 226 of the electoral votes to Trump's 180, and of course you need 270 to win. What about the prospect of a scenario of 2000, where one candidate gets the popular vote and loses the electoral vote?
Not impossible.
So
Not impossible.
It could
at all.
happen again.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
But it's all boiling down. This election could be won by as few as 7 states, is it? 7 or 8 states?
You know, it really, Marvin, it can go any possible way. I mean, if Hillary Clinton can pull some of the key battleground states like Nevada, like North Carolina, it could end up being an early night and everybody could think, wow, that was much ado about nothing. Or it could be the most contentious, crazy, chaotic scenario that you could possibly imagine. I'm prepared for both contingencies.
Yeah.
She wins this. She wins it because of demographic shift. Movement of northern blacks, northern African Americans to the south, changing the demographic makeup. Latinos, so-called, I don't like that word, but living in particular places, voting with greater numbers. The fact that the Midwest is probably declining in population. It is a watershed election because it reflects the beginning of a demographic and political shift and the final kind of breakdown of both these parties. And what comes after it won't be decided until some time to come.
I think both parties are facing huge changes and uprising among, you saw it with the populist movement with Bernie Sanders, and you're seeing it on the Republican side with Trump. So what both parties look like. If Hillary's elected, she's going to be held to the fire by these progressives to really adopt a very liberal agenda. And if it's Trump, the whole face of the Republican Party, I think, has changed.
Well, Florida is one of those states. And right now, there's a virtual tie between the two candidates. Whoever wins Florida, could you say, wins this election?
Not necessarily.
No, I don't think so. I think that
it's a must-win state.
As Hank pointed out earlier, the map inherently favors Democrats. The demographics inherently favor Democrats. There are so many more opportunities for Hillary to get to her win number than for Trump. Trump doesn't just have to win Florida. He has to string together a number of these states where even up until quite recently he wasn't competitive. So he could win Florida and very well lose the election.
Okay, we're going to take a break. Come back. I'm going to ask the partisan here. Why Donald Trump? Those who are still undecided, why should they vote for Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton? Think about that. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back, and we'll ask Jessica that question. This has been such a contentious and polarizing election season. It's incredible. I don't think we've ever experienced this before. Have you seen anything like this before, Hank?
We've had moments like this in American history, but this is unusual because this is the real. This change election has to do everything with how we communicate, how information is communicated, and the demographic shifts we see around us. When you consider the fact that we had a 74-year-old man from a state that relies on milk price supports and supports guns, who's not a liberal state at all, Vermont, as the populist, a nearly 70-year-old man from New York, a reasonably successful developer, as the Republican candidate, and a woman who bases New York as home, who's been in the news for 40 years, who's nearly 70 years old. I mean, there's nothing new about any of this, Marvin.
Now, we have two candidates who have higher unfavorables. I think they're both in the 70s with the unfavorables versus favorable. And here we are, we're confronted with one of those elections, the lesser of two evils. So you, the partisan, Jessica, you represent the Republican Party here in New York State. Why should those who are still undecided vote for Donald Trump?
I think for people that feel like the system in Washington is broken, that it is a system that favors special interests and that does not work for them, they are looking for a change. And it is clear, if one thing that these FBI revelations have made clear to everybody is that the Clintons are all about their own power, amassing their own wealth at the expense of everyday Americans. And I think, clearly 8 years of Obama, people strongly felt like they wanted a different direction, both international concerns and domestically with things like the economy. So it is not so much even a vote for Trump, it is a vote against the Clintons and everything that they represent.
Well, hold on. The last time we had a Clinton in the White House, I just want to remind you, he came in when there were double-digit interest rates, a whole bunch of other things. We had the most successful economy since the Great Depression. We had more mortgages issued to more people. We had more people working.
But Hank, he's not on the ballot. And Hillary, the Democratic Party is so different today than it was. It's not Bill Clinton's party and it's not Kennedy's party. It is a different Democratic Party today, and that's who she will represent.
I think you have to argue, George Bush, a decent man, that this isn't his party either.
I would agree
a few
with that.
chips are loose here.
So, Hank, all right, you represent Democratic candidates. Why should voters who are undecided right now vote for Hillary Clinton?
Well, look, Vladimir Putin is the enemy of this country. He's got low-grade nuclear weapons amassing every day closer and closer to the Polish border. Who do you trust to deal with Putin? Do you trust a guy who has never had any experience in foreign affairs, or do you trust somebody who actually knows what they're doing? That's really simple. Who says the most outrageous things and who thinks he can get away with it, or do you trust somebody who actually knows what to do, as a senator and as a secretary of state? I think you got to trust the person who knows what to do. Our lives are at risk. This is not a joke.
Speaking of trust,
this is not a reality show. This is real.
It's interesting, Hank, speaking of trust, because one of the later polls have shown that people feel that Donald Trump is more trustworthy than Hillary Clinton. I think a higher percentage of people felt that
overall, but not in this particular area. We are in very, very risky turf. We need somebody who can take care of that turf now.
Okay, let's turn to the nonpartisan here. You've heard both of them. Who do you think will be more effective in that Oval Office?
Well, what I would like to point out above all is the gravity of this election. It's so easy when we get caught up in the back and forth in the media and this slew of attacks to think about it as if it were a horse race, as if it were something that would just, it's going to dissipate on Election Day and then we'll be done with it. I mean, this is an election that will be defining for our nation for a very long time to come. And it is a marker of so many things about the media, about our cultural shifts. Every single newspaper in this country, with the exception of one basically overtly partisan paper, has endorsed Hillary Clinton. There's been a massive coalescing of the establishment forces around Hillary Clinton's campaign. If she loses, that will be a profound repudiation of all these institutions that have held so strong for so long. Everyone, however you are going to vote, you need to go out and participate in this election because it will have enormous consequences for our country.
Turnout is important. It is really tantamount in this election.
It is, and I think certainly we've seen all along this level of Trump enthusiasm, and I think the latest FBI revelations with the Clinton Foundation being under investigation is going to depress Democratic turnout.
And maybe the fact that you haven't paid taxes for all these years and used every tax break known to mankind.
It's been a non-issue.
Maybe that is something voters will remember. Look, simple. This is a watershed election. They're both right, okay? Because everything is changing. Television is becoming less significant as an influencer. Newsprint certainly. The internet is dominant, and the candidates. Hillary Clinton can't explain policy in 12 seconds, and Trump wants to. It's very simple.
I want to talk for a few moments about the congressional races, because this is also very important there, because the Republicans can lose control of Congress. How's that looking at this point?
I don't believe the Republicans lose control of the House. I think that would be very difficult to see.
What about Senate?
Senate, the Democrats should have a net pickup. They normally would in a year like this. But are the Democrats going to control the Senate? I think it's iffy right now. That could change.
Again, I think just everything that's happened in the last week, it has sent a message to Republicans of how important it will be to have a Republican House and a Republican Senate. I don't think at any point the House was in jeopardy. But what you're seeing across the country also is that even despite all of this populist uprising, the incumbent House members throughout the primary season were all being reelected. They were not being defeated by primary challengers. So that's something to keep in mind.
In order for the Democrats to win the House of Representatives, there would have to be a tidal wave of Democratic support. I don't think we are going to see that. And the tightening of the races in the Senate, certainly, this is the best Democratic opportunity for some time to take the Senate. But, I think it's on a razor's edge at this moment.
This is quite historic in so many ways. Particularly, we have two candidates from New York who are holding election night rallies here in New York. We've never seen anything like this before.
New York is where all the action happens.
That's right.
Now, also, as we have found out in the last couple of weeks, the last couple of months, we're taping this on Friday. Anything can happen Saturday or Sunday or Monday before the election. Any more November surprises?
Who knows? There's always WikiLeaks. I would not even deign to predict what could happen this weekend.
I know that security is being ratcheted up just in case Al-Qaeda has anything for any cyber or anything else like that, because the way this year is going, you never know what to expect.
Marvin, the Cubs won the World Series. The moon is going to be the closest to the Earth in a century. I mean, between now and Sunday, something will happen that will embarrass all of us for what we said today on the show.
So as we so far frequently say in this business, stay tuned.
Exactly.
And hope you'll all join us, of course, Tuesday night for a complete coverage of this historic election on Pix 11 News. And thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Morgan. Thank you, Hank. Always appreciate your insight. Now it's up to you folks to vote. Make sure you do that on Tuesday. That'll do it for our program for this week. If you have any comments or wish to see this broadcast again, log on to our website at pix11.com/newscloseup. I'm Marvin Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everyone, and go out and vote.